Okay.
Hi, Jen. Really nice to meet you.
Yeah, so good to see you.
Great to meet you in person.
Looking forward to hearing.
I actually wanted to start playing the piano when I was younger, but my dad is a professional musician and he didn't want his son to have that life. So the piano was locked away in another room in the apartment and I was not allowed to go there. It wasn't until I was 11 years old that I actually started playing. And I think it was something I wanted to do so badly that I just started practicing and it just became a regular part of my life very early. So I think by the time I was 14, I knew I wanted to be a concert pianist. Went through all the Royal Conservatory training that as most pianists do here in Canada. I went for 2 years to the University of Victoria in BC, and then I finished with 2 years at the University of Calgary and got my undergraduate there. And then I had dreams of maybe going abroad to a bigger school. So I auditioned at Juilliard School in New York and I ended up getting in, which was wonderful. And so I got my master's there, and then I went on and got my doctorate as well. After that, I guess I was one of the lucky ones because I ended up getting an academic position at Lawrence University in Appleton, Wisconsin. And so I spent 12 years in Wisconsin, and I was really grateful for that opportunity because they took a chance on somebody who was young, inexperienced, but really wanted to do a good job. And so bit by bit, I ascended through the ranks. I did a lot of teaching and performing. And towards the end of that, they started turning me into an administrator. They actually felt that I had some potential there. The last 2 years, I ended up being chair of the keyboard department, and then the president there appointed me her faculty associate to the president. After that, Brandon University, as it turned out, was looking for a new dean, and a friend of mine in Canada called me and said, hey, they're looking for a new dean, and I'm going to nominate you for the position. I said, really? I don't have a lot of experience, and so I ended up spending 7 years in Brandon, and it was a great formative experience. That was my first true senior leadership position, and so I learned what it was to be a leader, what it was to be a dean, what it was to lead people, what it was to sort of inspire people, what it was to just sort of shape sort of the strategic direction of an institution. And then they renewed me for another 5 years, but then in my 7th year, University of Minnesota in Minneapolis contacted me, and they were looking for a director of school of music, and I spent 6 years there. Minnesota has a very rich cultural scene, and I learned what it was to lead at a large American university. And I think that was some of the most formative years for me in terms of learning how to be an administrator and how to think on a grand scale at a larger institution like that. Then Western came calling. I've been here at Western for the past 4 years, and I feel like in my journey I've sort of brought together sort of my skills as a performer. There's a lot of transferable skills there, right, in terms of creativity, collaboration, empathy, all those sorts of things, which I think are really important to not only just be a good administrator, to be a good human being.
So you still perform as a concert pianist, and how is that going, and what does that mean to you personally?
Well, I think it's really important when you're an administrator to walk the talk, right? So, you set expectations for your faculty and for your community and for your students, but I think you have to demonstrate that same excellence yourself as well. And so to keep you in touch with what made you want to be in music in the first place, I still perform. Practice time is a bit of a challenge these days. Playing the piano is a very physical thing, right? So unless you force yourself to play, or you schedule things, it's very easy to let it lapse. And if you let it lapse too long, then it's kind of like an Olympic athlete who doesn't actually practice every day, right? You have to practice on a regular basis, and you have to give yourself incentive to practice it. But more importantly, it's still something I'm very passionate about, right? I mean, I love playing the piano, and I love sort of performing for audiences.
Oftentimes, many consider arts as something optional. What do you think?
Well, I guess it would come to no surprise with anybody when I say the arts are not optional. I think they're a very, very important part of cultivating the whole person. And so I feel like the arts is the one thing that keeps in touch with what it is to be human, right? I mean, and I think people will increasingly value the idea of the human experience, the beauty of the human experience, the frailty of what it is to be human, because everything around us is sort of in this sort of state of technological perfection, if you will. My biggest inspiration is a very personal one. So my biggest inspiration actually is my wife. So I think probably the most transformative experience for me was to get married. And she's also a very talented pianist, and she's also a professor here at Western as well. Being a dean is difficult, but I think being a dean's spouse is even more difficult, right? Because there are all sorts of associations that come with that and expectations, which are very complex and difficult to manage. And I think my wife, Kyung, she handles those with incredible grace. And she's also a great advisor. I would say that she's prevented me from stepping into various landmines. And I think, although she tells me many things, I think one could sort of sum it up this way. Never forget what it is to be a student. Remember when you were a student. Never forget what it was like when you were a professor. And you always need to make sure that you shape your vision and never lose track of that.
What does it mean to receive this year's Dream Tree Award by KCSF?
Well, I have to say I'm really thrilled, humbled, honored. There are so many talented, smart Korean Canadians who I think would be equally worthy of this award. So, I mean, honestly, it's one of the most special awards I've ever received in my whole life, because I think it sort of recognizes this whole odyssey I've been on. This whole idea of following your dream, following your passion, knowing what makes you stand out as an individual is an important part of that award. And I think it's something that the future generations of Korean Canadians should think about. With everything that's going on, all the traditional career pathways are not so traditional anymore. So you might as well follow your passion and think deeply about what makes you different and special. And I feel like I found my way to be able to do that. And I feel like the award recognizes that, but I'm hoping that will also be a touch point and inspiration for other people to follow. There's an old story of a successful CEO, and somebody asked the CEO, well, how is it became a successful CEO? By making the right decisions. And how did you learn to make the right decisions? By making wrong decisions, right? And so the people who put themselves out there and are not afraid to make mistakes or to fail are ultimately the ones who succeed, right? I believe in taking risks, and I like taking risks. Now, sometimes my superiors don't appreciate that, but I feel like there's no way you're going to get to the next level unless you're willing to take those risks and take those investments, right? And if you look at all the greatest people and their stories, it's all been the same sort of thing. So I guess if I had one more thing to say about my whole journey about getting here, perhaps, is that I think it was a willingness to take risks. And that makes you a much more powerful person, a much more worldly person. And I think that's why I am where I am today. And I think that's another big important skill that you have to be successful, that adaptability and that willingness to just embrace new environments and changes, let's experience new things, is really important as well. So it's been this sort of constant evolution. And now I feel like I'm in a place where I'm still learning, but I have sort of a core of experience that I can draw on, which can then help sort of my communities thrive.
What is that one piece of advice that you find yourself keep giving?
The main piece of advice I would give anybody is just be yourself and know who you are. It seems like simple advice, but it actually isn't. And I think human beings are very complex creatures, right? I mean, we're made up of many different experiences, cultures, thoughts. But through all that, you have to wade through all that and figure out, what is it that I really want with my life? What is it that I'm passionate about? And then pursue that single-handedly. There are times I think our education system fails people with that, because we try and make generalists of everybody. And I agree, at some point you have to experience a little bit of everything. But candidly, when I was going through high school, I knew I wanted to be a pianist. And a lot of this other stuff for me was distractions. Different people feel different things, and you need to have experience in different things so that you understand how everything works. But ultimately, I think the goal of education should be to help people figure out who they are, what they want, and then help them get there. So be yourself, follow your passion. Great things will happen if you do that.